So in this tutorial, we're going to go over the introduction to medical care ethics. And the first thing that we want to do is, what does it mean? What's the definition for healthcare ethics? So apart from us saying healthcare ethics, we can also say medical ethics. Apart from that, we can also just say bioethics. So we mean the same thing when we get to mention all these healthcare ethics, medical ethics, or bioethics. We are just talking about the same thing. So how would we define medical care ethics or bioethics or healthcare ethics? Now, at its simplest, healthcare ethics or bioethics are a set of moral principles. So these are just moral principles or beliefs or values. Okay. So these are just moral principles, beliefs, and values that guide. So I'm writing the main words here for us to understand. So moral principles, beliefs, values, which guide, or which direct, or which lead. Okay. So which guide us in making choices about medical care. Guide in choices of medical care. So that is what we call healthcare ethics. Simply moral principles, beliefs, and values that guide us in making choices about medical care. So at the very middle of this, we are calling as healthcare ethics. There is our sense of right and wrong. So if there is the word moral, so morality has to tell about something which is wrong or right. So at the very middle of healthcare ethics, there is our sense of whether what we are doing is right or wrong, and our beliefs about rights we possess and duties that we owe to others. So even as you are getting to, even as you have got these principles and beliefs and values to guide you on choosing what to do in the medical care, you need to know that we possess the duties to be able to take care of others. So we owe it all to others. We need to make sure that even as health professionals, we get to ensure that everyone else is at peace. Our patients are at peace. So that is at the middle of it all. There is that feeling, just that thing that we have in us, just that we owe it all even to others. So the sense of wrong and right is also there. So let's have some background understanding of healthcare ethics. So on the background understanding, we need to understand the meaning of morality, law, and ethics. When you want to understand, because remember we are saying healthcare ethics are principles, beliefs, and values that guide us in what we are going to do in healthcare delivery. So, and we know that at the middle of it all, there is that just that sense of owing it all to others, and there is a sense of right and wrong. So, what is going to guide on all those senses of right and wrong, of owing it all to others? So now we have got morality. So let's first get to understand what does it mean. What is morality? So morality, these are notions. Well, notions are ideas which people think to be important. So just those ideas which people get to think as important. So notions of right and wrong. So that is what we call morality. What do you take for yourself? What do you take yourself as is right and wrong? Because trust me, what others take as right, others don't take it as right. You might take yourself living a life just to insult as normal, others might not take it as normal. So that is morality. So the notions or the ideas that you have yourself of what is right and what is wrong. So this can be for an individual or just for a group or a community. So what does the community consider to be right and wrong? That is their morality. Now, what about law? So when you talk about law, these are simply norms. So norms, these are principles or things which are set to guide the community or to guide a certain grouping. So norms set by, now these are set by legal frameworks. So set by legal frameworks, okay, that are enforceable by state agents. So a law is simply something that has been set by legal frameworks. Now these legal frameworks can be, for example, the courts of law, and everyone who makes sure that there is law and order. Peradventure even traditional chiefs and something like that. So norms which have been set by legal frameworks. So those are laws. Now these are enforced. So there is need for enforcing, and these are going to be enforced by state agents. For example, the police are going to enforce them, or maybe let's say ZNS in case of Zambia, the Zambia National Service. We don't know if they get to enforce, but we know that the police gets to enforce laws. So norms which are set by legal frameworks. So firstly, you have got what you consider to be right and wrong. Okay, what is right, what is wrong. And from there, if you tell what is right and what is wrong, then these legal frameworks like the courts, the government, the judiciary are going to come in now and get to make laws so that when you get to break this, there should be a consequence. Because just morality itself, just the notions of what is right and wrong, will not really guide the community. So if you know that this is right and this is wrong, what if you don't obey it? That is why there is also state agents to make sure that anyone who fails to get to obey is going to face also the law. The law gets to determine what is going to happen to that person. So apart from that, you also have got ethics. Now, what are ethics? So ethics are also norms. Now, these are norms which are mutually recognized by a group as a guiding principle of conduct and practice. So norms mutually accepted or agreed or recognized by a group. So these are recognized by a group for what reason? So as a guiding principle. As a guiding principle and of conduct and practice. So there, that is what we call ethics. For example, when you have got a religious grouping, so here you have a group, and that is a group of religious people. So they are going to set some ethics for them as a guiding principle of conduct and practice. You cannot do this even if it is not in the law, but as just a certain group, they can set up some things for them to do. For example, at the University of Zambia, they might set up, well, you have got the three F's. So of course you have got the law. The law is on its own, but one of the things that you need to take note of is don't fail, don't fish, and don't fight. So those can be university ethics. You don't do those things. Those are principles which are been set by a group as a guiding principle of conduct and practice. Everything that you can do it, but don't fail, don't fish, and don't fight. So those are guiding principles. So we can call those as ethics. So that is it about the background knowledge, morality, law, and ethics. Now we need to look at some major normative ethics or ethics theories. So, what are some theories which talk about the principles which guide the living of man? Remember, we're talking about ethics theories. So, this is ethics. All right. So, two major normative ethics theories. So, what are some theories which talk about ethics? What guide a grouping of people of what to do and what not to do? So, here we have got some things that guide people on what to do and what not to do. There is duty and also consequence. So, one of these talks about duty, one of these theories talks about duty, another one talks about consequences. So the first one here is deontological theory or deontology. And the second one, let me get to put it here, which is utilitarianism. Alright, so here we have them. Deontological theory and utilitarian theory or utilit. So the word is kind of long, so I need to think for me to pronounce it. That's utilitarianism or utilitarian theory. Also, I've got deontological theory or deontology. Now, what are these? What do they talk about? So, when it comes to deontology, first we need to know the one who got to establish this one. Deontological theory is Immanuel Kant. That's a wrong spelling of Emmanuel, so this is E. And the one who established the utilitarian theory, that is Jeremy Bentham. Now, what do these two theories talk about? So, when we are talking about the deontology theory or deontological theory, this one says normatic ethical positions that judge the morality of an action based on the action adherence to rules or duties. So, this is just your adherence to rules and duties. How much are you able to stick to rules and how much able are you to stick to duties? Adherence to rules and duties. So, adherence. Now, when you talk of utilitarianism, here you are talking about based on the consequences of an action. Normative ethical position that judges the morality of an action based on the consequences of an action. Based on the consequences of an action. So now we need to really know the meaning of these two. So when we come to deontology, it says someone who is morally upright, someone who is righteous, or someone who is moral. A moral person is someone who gets to adhere to any rule and duty. It doesn't matter whether that rule has got consequences or not, as long as you adhere. For example, you are deontologically upright when you get to follow anything that has been put, regardless of the consequence that comes. If someone says, don't steal, you don't steal regardless of the consequences. Even if you are stealing because you want to help someone, don't steal. Then you are deontologically upright. So you don't care anything about anything else, but all you care about is the rules and the duty. What is your duty in that circumstance? Okay. Even if something that, so if it says, if a rule says deontological, if a rule or a duty says do not do not get any money from this piece of money that is here, or do not move out of the house at 18 hours. So that is your duty. Even if you hear someone is shouting outside that they are about to be killed, you don't get outside, even if that person gets killed. So you are adhering to rules and duties. Deontologically, you are upright. Now, when it comes to utilitarianism, someone who is upright in this theory is someone, you judge the action by the consequences. So anything that is going to make people happy, then it is fine. It doesn't matter how it looks like, as long as it makes you happy, then it is fine. That is according to Jeremy Bentham. That is how he gets to make norms for the society. So those are two major normative ethic theories. For example, does drinking make you happy? Then it is alright according to Jeremy Bentham, regardless of what comes after, as long as it gets to make you happy. So you're only interested in looking at the consequences of the matter. What are the consequences? Are they negative or positive? If they are positive, then you are morally upright. So that is about Jerome Bentham and also Immanuel Kant. So now let's get to describe these a bit more in detail. So when we are talking about deontology, we'll start with that one. This word deontology comes from a Greek word which is dion. So in Greek that is dion. And this word in Greek means obligation. It also means duty. Okay. So when it comes to deontology, it is simply a duty, obligation, or rule based ethics. So because rules bind you to your duty, so that is basically about deontology. Rules bind you to duty. So if you have got this rule in the society, then it is your duty to get to follow that rule regardless of anything that gets to happen. So rules are going to bind you to duty. So if you have got a rule, don't come at the workplace after 8 hours. It is now becoming a duty. You just have to do it. And if you get to follow that, then you are deontologically upright. So each deontologist chooses their own constraints freely. So you are going to choose, if you are a person who follows the theory of deontology, you are going to choose things that you are going to put yourself as your own rules for yourself. So that is it. So you are going to set constraints for yourself. Now these constraints are what we are calling as rules. So you set them for yourself, and then so these constraints can be either religious or ideological. Maybe you have just an idea or belief systems or just values, things you consider to be important. So you are going to put them, and when you get to obey these, so when you follow your duty to obey these rules that you have put, so then you are a moral person. And when you fail to obey, to follow your duty or to follow these rules that you've put yourself, then you are an immoral person. So thus, for you to make a correct moral choice according to deontology, you have to understand what your duties are. When you know your duties, you follow them, then you are deontologically an upright man. So there are some characteristics of deontology that we have to know. Deontology looks at the action itself. So that is one characteristic. It looks at the action and not the consequence. So deciding whether it is prohibited or made obligatory by one of the rules, and do not look at how much good might be caused by an action. You are not interested whether the thing that you are doing is going to do any person any good or it will do harm. All you do is because it has been put down, let me get to follow it, whether it is going to have a bad effect or a good effect. So the main point of deontology is there is something wrong or right in the act itself and not in the result or in the consequence. So something right or wrong in the act and not in the consequences. Okay. So I've made sure that I've concentrated on this one for the understanding. So let's get to make sure that we really get to know that. So one person, there's what is called goodwill. The highest good must be good in itself and good without qualification. That is what one person said. The highest good must be good in itself and good without qualification. So nothing should qualify anything. If you know that this is good, nothing should qualify it. It should be good in itself, not that no, first let's look at the consequences if it is good or bad. So if something is good, it is just good itself and nothing should qualify it. So that is a basis of deontology. Now let's look at the other one. So remember, Immanuel Kant is the one who got to put up the deontological theory, and this man stayed from 1724 to 1804. Okay. So let's get to understand the other one, which is utilitarianism. So this one, the word utilitarianism comes from the word utility. So you can just try to pronounce the word if you pronounce it well. Otherwise, I'm also trying to pronounce it well, though at points I'm failing. So utilitarianism coming from the word utility. So this was defined by the philosopher Bentham, as we said, Jeremy Bentham. It is a consequentialist philosophy because it focuses on consequences. So it is only focused on the consequences. You don't care the act itself. So you just look at the consequences. So in here they say utility, of course, is the moral good, is happiness. So anything that is good is anything that gives you happiness. That is the meaning of utility. Anything, I don't know what that might be, that can give you happiness. For example, pleasure, if enjoying is what gives you happiness, or health, a good health, or even knowledge or satisfaction, anything that gives you happiness, then that is what is morally good. And happiness is defined as the maximization of pleasure and the minimization of pain for everyone. So that is according to Jeremy Bentham. If you get to maximize pleasure and minimize pain, maximize pleasure and minimize pain for everyone, not just one person. So this means if for someone killing people is what makes you happy, that is not minimizing pain for everyone. it is actually increasing pain for people. So according to utilitarianism, it is not morally correct to do that. Even if it is making you happy, the one who is doing it, it should be happiness for everyone. So maximization of pleasure and minimization of pain for everyone is what is defined as happiness. And when everyone is happy, then that act is correct or is fine. So no moral act or rule is right or wrong. Rather, the right or wrongness in something is a matter of the consequences that comes out of it. So that is according to Jeremy Bentham. There's really nothing that is wrong. There's really nothing that is bad. There's really nothing that is good. What determines whether something is good or bad is just what gets to come out of that act. So Jeremy Bentham lives from 1748 to 1832, and he emphasized that pleasure is a main driver for people's action. People do everything so that they can just gain pleasure. That is why we can hear of wars there, wars are there, they are fighting for land, fighting for oil. That is because they want pleasure, they want happiness. So that is according to Jeremy Bentham. So there are some implications of this principle which was set by Jeremy Bentham, and here it says one of the implications. So one implication of this theory is that the end justifies the means. Justifies the means. And this is really not good, where the end justifies the means. So what does this statement mean? The end justifies the means. So human beings shouldn't be the means. Human beings are in themselves an end. That we need to know. So the meaning of the end justifies the means is that whatsoever that you have done, as long as what is coming out is good, then everything that you did is just fine. That is the meaning of the statement. The means through which you got something does not matter as long as what you have gotten is good. So even if you killed, even if you insulted, even if you hate people, as long as at the end of it all, the end is good, and in this good, it has brought you happiness, then it is fine. So that is the implication of this theory which was set by Jeremy Bentham, and it is really not good because you can go to any extent to make sure that you just get to do anything that is going to make you happy. So also another implication of this theory is that those who are the ethenically correct or proper course of action or rule is the one that maximizes the overall happiness. So anything that gets to maximize overall happiness. Okay, so what is correct is just anything that gets to maximize overall happiness. So is it a happiness for a group? But basically for this man, he got to talk about everyone. So anything that is going to maximize happiness for everyone is correct. So you don't care about the rules which have been put there. Of course, they are religious rules. You don't care about them. You don't care about anything that you've been tied with. As long as there is happiness, overall happiness, then what you have done is correct. Okay, so in this, another implication of this theory is that the agent knows or can predict the consequences of an action. So you can basically predict the consequences of an action as an agent. So if you are an agent, for example, yourself, you are able to predict the consequence of an action yourself. So if there is something that is going to come out, you even know that this is going to be able to come out of this, and all you are doing is that you are only interested in having pleasure for yourself, but the agent knows or can predict the consequences in utilitarianism. So the agent can compare various types of consequences against each other on a similar scale. So we can suppress the individual or minority in the interest of the majority. So one individual's thing which they get for happiness can be suppressed just in the interest of a lot of people, so that a lot of people can be happy even if one person is sad, because that is the main aim of this theory. So just in summary on these normative principles of ethics, there is the deontological theory and utilitarianism theory. So we need to get to remember this. One is only interested in the effects or the consequences, while another one interested in how much you're able to follow rules and principles. Well, thank you so much for having present in. So if this was helpful, be